All right, in the previous lecture, we talked about the case for utilitarianism, and now it's time to get to the critique, the problems. So there are a bunch of challenges for utilitarianism. We're going to talk about a couple ones that I think are particularly important. First, let's talk about a challenge that can probably be met, but we'll really just highlight a way that we should modify our initial definition of utilitarianism. So remember, the initial definition is that an action is morally right if and only if it maximizes happiness. But I want you to think about a couple scenarios and whether you think that this is a plausible definition in light of them. So imagine that you have some kind of heart condition such that you have these episodes that if you don't get a medication immediately, you'll die, right? I think that there may exist something like this, where you're having some kind of heart problem, and then if you take some kind of medication, you'll be okay. If you don't get it, you could have a heart attack. And imagine that I know about this, and I'm a friend of yours, and we're together one day. We're sitting there, and you start having one of these episodes, and you say, you start clutching your chest and saying, I need my medication, or I'm going to die. And, I'm very concerned about this. I want to save your life. So I rush over to get your medication, and I grab the bottle, and, I come over and I say, is this your medication? You say, yeah, and the bottle's labeled in the right way and everything. And I open the bottle, open it up, give you one of the pills in there, and you take the pill, and then you immediately die, right? And it turns out that the bottle was mislabeled, right? That actually what happened was that the pharmacy made a mistake, right? And they put the wrong stuff in the bottle. So when I gave you the pill, it really wasn't the kind of pill you needed. Now, I had no idea. I was doing what you told me to do. The bottle was labeled for the kind of heart medication that we both thought you needed. Now, what do we think about that situation intuitively? Morally speaking, did I do something morally wrong? Ask yourself that first. Did I, by giving you that pill, do something morally wrong? Okay, now ask yourself a second question. What would our definition of utilitarianism say about that case? So think about that for a minute. So, okay, good. If you thought about that, let's go over what you might think. So first, do you think intuitively that you've done something morally wrong in that situation? I hope that most of you said no. I was doing everything I could to help my friend. I was going by the information. It was perfectly reasonable for me to take that bottle. He requested the bottle. The bottle was labeled in the right way. It wasn't my mistake. The pharmacist made a mistake. I had no idea. I gave him the pill. I thought I was saving his life. It was totally reasonable to think I was saving his life. It turns out that because of the pharmacist's error, that pill actually killed him, right? So I think intuitively there we want to say that you have not done anything morally wrong, that your action was completely morally permissible. In fact, I think it's plausible to say that you were morally obligated to give that pill because of the circumstances, the information that you had. Now, second question, what does our definition of utilitarianism say about that case? Well, if you said that our definition will imply that you've done the morally wrong thing, then you're correct. Because that's what it looks like it will imply, right? You have not maximized happiness, right? There were other options available to you that would have maximized happiness, and you didn't take them. Let's imagine this, that your friend got two medications. Let's add this to our situation. Your friend actually picked up two medications from the pharmacy, and the pharmacist mislabeled them, right? The labels are wrong. So the proper heart medication was in this other bottle, and the wrong medication was in the one that was labeled as the heart medication. So as you were giving your friend the wrong pill, right over on the counter, right over there sitting, was the right pill. But it was in a completely different kind of medication bottle. So out of all the options available to you, right? You did have an option that would have maximized happiness. If you had grabbed the other bottle, the bottle that was labeled as something completely different, and gave your friend that pill, you would have saved your friend's life. Now, utilitarianism will say that because that option was available to you, you have done the morally wrong thing by giving your friend the pill from the bottle you did. But I think that's a problem, right? Because most of us think, no, look, you were doing everything you could. You took the bottle that was labeled the heart medication. Your friend even agreed that that was the right bottle. You knew that you thought quite reasonably that this is what your friend needed, and you gave it to him. And the fact that the pharmacist screwed up the labels, that is not your fault, right? And that there's no moral wrongdoing on your part. And you might think further, utilitarianism is saying something crazy here. It's saying that you should have given your friend a pill from a bottle marked differently. And you think that would have been crazy. Imagine that situation. Your friend's dying, and he says, give me my heart medication. And you get some pill, you read it, it's something other than the heart medication, and you give him that pill. That would be crazy. A lot of us think, no, that's not the morally right thing to do. But utilitarianism would say that that was the right thing to do in that situation. Problem. That's a problem for utilitarianism. It looks like it's getting the wrong answer. It's telling us something that's intuitively false. Okay, similar situation, a little bit different. Another kind of pill bottle situation. In this situation, you are not a nice person. You mean to kill your friend, right? He's your friend, but really underneath, you don't really like him, and you're a devious, evil person, and you want to poison and kill your friend, right? So you're also a kind of amateur chemist, and you cook up some kind of chemical concoction, and you add some sweetener so we won't know what's going on, and you put it in a vitamin bottle, right? And you know that if your friend eats these course of vitamins over like 2 weeks, this poison will build up in his system, and the level of toxicity will kill him, right? So you go to do this, and you get this all set up, and you put it in this vitamin bottle, but unwittingly, you're a bit of a boob, and you grab the wrong bottle when you go to your friend's house. So you have a couple bottles that look like vitamins in your house. One of them is this one that you filled with poison, but the other one is a real bottle of vitamins. It's some of those nice, yummy, gummy vitamins that you can buy in the grocery store. And instead of taking the bottle of the poisonous pills you meant to kill your friend, you meant to kill this person with, you grab the real vitamins, the legitimate gummy vitamins, and you bring them to your friend's house and you give them to your friend. And you don't realize this, and you're like, ha 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 ha, my friend's gonna, this guy's gonna be poisoned soon, and your diabolical laugh. But what really happens? Well, your friend eats the real vitamins, and he enjoys them, and they have that nice gummy vitamin taste, and he gets some health benefits from them. And let's say that he was a little bit low on zinc and vitamin C, and now he's not, right? So okay, you think that you're poisoning your friend, but really you've given him a bottle of vitamins. Now, again, let's ask ourselves a couple questions. Intuitively, what do you think about the morality of your giving him the bottle in this situation? Do you think you've done the morally right or wrong thing in giving him this bottle to eat? Giving him these pills to eat? That's the first question. Second question, what does our definition of utilitarianism say about this situation? Okay, so let's take the first question. Intuitively, right, have you done the morally right thing or wrong thing by giving this person this bottle of pills to eat? I hope that you'll think, well, you've done something morally wrong. You thought you were poisoning this person, right? You had every intention to kill this person by poisoning, and you gave him this bottle of pills that you well thought was a bottle of poison. So I think that most of us will say, well, you've done something immoral there. That's morally wrong. Second question, what does our definition of utilitarianism imply about this case? Well, it looks, right, that it's going to say that you've done something morally right. So other things being equal, you've increased happiness, right? We can imagine here that you've maximized happiness in the sense that you've picked the option that that leaves happiness the highest in giving him this bottle, because the bottle has actual vitamins in it, and he's enjoying the vitamins, and they're adding to his health. So, let's imagine you've increased his happiness a little bit. In relation to what his level of happiness if you didn't give him the bottle, right? If you hadn't given that bottle of vitamins, he would have been a little less happy. He wouldn't have been enjoying them and increasing his health a little bit. So utilitarianism here will say that you've done the morally right thing by giving him this bottle of pills to eat, even though you thought you were giving him poison that would kill him. Okay, again, this looks bad for utilitarianism. It looks like it's getting the intuitively false answer to this situation. So what that means, that suggests that there's something wrong with our initial definition of utilitarianism. And I think that's right. I think we would have to modify, I think that initial definition has to be modified. I don't think that this is necessarily a devastating problem for utilitarianism, because I think we can modify that initial definition to account for this kind of situation, for these kinds of situations. So in the notes, I have the modification that I think utilitarianism requires, which is it says that your action is morally right if and only if you can reasonably expect it to maximize happiness. So instead of talking about what actually maximizes happiness, now we're talking about what you can reasonably expect to maximize happiness. There's a big difference between those two things. So think about how that applies to our situations, the ones with the pills we just talked about. Right? Think about the first situation. You don't actually maximize happiness because you give your friend the wrong pills, what turned out to be the wrong pills. But when you give your friend those pills, the mislabeled ones, can you reasonably expect that you're going to maximize happiness in that situation? Yes, right? You're taking the pills that are marked with the heart medication. He's telling you to give him those pills. You have every reason to believe that you're giving him the right pills. So it's reasonable for you to expect that by giving him these pills, you'll save his life and thus maximize happiness. So this reformulation of utilitarianism gets that answer right. Now take our second situation. You're giving someone what you think are a bottle of poisonous pills that will kill them. It turns out that you actually maximize happiness when you do this because, unbeknownst to you, you're really giving them just a bottle of ordinary vitamins. But let's consider how this turns out on our reformulation. When you give them that bottle, which you think is poison, even though it's really not, can you reasonably expect to maximize happiness? No, you can't. Right? Because you believe that you're giving them a bottle of poison. So you can't reasonably expect that to maximize happiness. You reasonably expect in that situation that the person's going to get sick and die, right? And even though it actually maximizes happiness, that's not what you can reasonably expect when you give them that bottle, which you think is poison. Okay, so that's just, I think that our reformulation sort of handles those kind of problems, and that what we need to think about is not the amount of happiness that our actions actually end up producing, but rather what it's reasonable to expect our actions to produce or not. And that reformulation handles, I think, a bunch of other problems that come up for utilitarianism. I'm going to skip over most of them, but you can see the kind of examples that I give illustrate one important problem that reformulation handles. Okay, so I might ask a question about that kind of example, and I might ask you to explain, how do we reformulate utilitarianism to deal with it? That might be a review question that goes up. So if you have questions about this or you're confused, send me an email. Let's see. So let's now get on to some problems for utilitarianism, some challenges that I don't think are so easily met by some kind of reformulation or anything like that. So the first one is a problem having to do with the demandingness of utilitarianism. Now, whether this is ultimately a kind of fatal problem for utilitarianism, it's not clear. But I think it brings out an important feature of utilitarianism that a lot of people are uncomfortable with. In that utilitarianism, when we actually realize it, when we think about it hard enough, it's a very demanding theory of morality. You could start to see this by realizing that it requires that you always maximize happiness. It's not just that you can, it's not optional. It's not saying, oh, it's a good thing for you to maximize happiness. Yeah, you get some extra points for maximizing happiness. It's saying that you're required to maximize happiness. And if you don't maximize happiness, you've in fact acted immorally, right? So, and that's the same even if we're talking about our reasonable expectations. So you always have to, we can put it this way, that you always have to do what you can reasonably expect to maximize happiness. And anytime you don't do that, you've acted immorally. Now, what happens is when we start to think about this, we see that this is very demanding. So right now, today, I don't know what you're doing. You're watching this lecture in your dorm or your apartment or at home or something like that. What else are you doing today? Right? What else have you done today? Maybe you sat around, you went out, maybe you went to the gym, you went to the mall, you went to a friend's house. Maybe you're just sitting around the house, right? Or the apartment or the dorm. Well, there are other things you could be doing today that would we can imagine, promote more happiness than what you're actually doing. Right? You could be involved in some kind of charitable event today. Right? You could be leading some kind of blood donation drive or on some kind of walk for cancer or something like that. You could be donating a little bit of your money. Maybe you have 50 cents or $1 that you could send away to some kind of charitable organization. Right? Just 50 cents a day will help to contribute to some sort of vital medical supplies for people who don't have enough clean water to drink or are dying of various simply treatable diseases that are fairly simply to treat in different parts of the world. Right? You could do these things. You're probably not doing them. You're probably not doing them on a daily basis. At minimum, you could go on the site freerice.com. I think that's the website. And you play a fun vocabulary game. And as you win the game, it contributes rice, which will be sent off to people who need food in various countries. So these are all things you could be doing that would take very little effort on your part. You might even enjoy some of them, and they would lead to the promotion of overall happiness. But you're not doing them, right? Right? Every time you go out, you spend money on, say, a new piece of clothing that you don't really need, or a meal in a restaurant when you could save. You could take that money and send it off to, again, help people who are in really dire conditions, having horrible medical situations happen to them, that you could, that this money would actually help treat them. So it looks like, when we start to think about it, that we're really not doing the things that would maximize happiness most of the time. Sometimes we do. In certain limited, restricted situations that are immediately in front of us, we do. But a lot of the downtime, so to speak, or the leisure time that we have, we don't. It looks like we're doing things that, we're making choices that do not maximize the total happiness number. You might get a little enjoyment going out to dinner when you spend, say, $15 on a plate at dinner. But if that money could be used to sort of provide vital treatment that would keep alive, even one person, or save one or two people from some kind of painful condition that they're suffering, right? Malaria or some kind of, I think a lot of people actually die due to I think that a lot of people in very poor countries actually die due to bad water, and they get diarrhea, and it kills them. And actually simple medications that prevent, that stop diarrhea can actually save people's lives, right? So if there's a person or two dying from this that you could save with the money that you spend on one dinner, the happiness that you would get from that dinner is presumably far outweighed by the prevention of their death or suffering, right? So it looks like a lot of the time, most of us are going around not maximizing happiness, not acting in ways that will truly maximize happiness. And what does utilitarianism then say about that? It says that we're going around acting immorally most of the time, or a large amount of the time. So if you're just sitting around today, just sitting on the couch doing not much of anything, then utilitarianism is probably going to say that you're acting immorally. That's immoral for you to do that. When you go out to dinner with your friends, that's immoral. Any time that you're not contributing to doing something that's going to maximize the total happiness number, you are thus doing something immoral. So let that sink in for a minute. Does that sound right with you? Does that sit right with you? Many people think that this means that utilitarianism is too demanding of a moral theory, and that it's implying something, even to the level of absurdity here, and that it's labeling us all immoral in these situations. You might think, look, I'm not immoral when I go out to dinner. I'm not immoral if I just, decide to take the day off and sit around on the couch. I can do that sometimes. That's fine, right? You might think that, helping people out, donating to charities and doing things like that, that's good. That's praiseworthy, but that's something extra. That's not required of me. That's not morally obligated. It's permissible, and in fact, it would be a good thing to do. We look favorably upon such people, but it's not always morally obligated for me to do those kind of things. That's how you might think about it. But if you think that, note that you're in conflict with what utilitarianism is saying. Utilitarianism isn't saying that it's morally permissible for you to, donate to charity and do things that maximize the total happiness number. It's saying that you're morally obligated to do those things. So every time that you sit around and you don't do that, or you choose to go out to dinner or spend your money in ways that doesn't maximize the total happiness number, you're doing something that's morally prohibited according to utilitarianism. So if you think that, so again, whether this is how serious of a problem is this for utilitarianism, I'm not sure. Some of us feel very strongly that we're not morally obligated to always be, involved in charitable things or really do what amounts to maximizing the total happiness. And if we're not, then utilitarianism is simply false. But another way to look at this question or this problem that I'm posing is to say that, is to sort of realize, well, you know what? I guess it's true. I guess we're not, we are acting immorally a lot of the time. So some people think, look, what utilitarianism shows us is that most of us are pretty morally awful. Maybe we're not morally awful in that we don't really go around realizing a lot of the time what we're doing and that we're not maximizing happiness. When you go out to dinner with your friends, you probably aren't thinking, hey, I could be using this money to help starving people, but who cares about them? I'm just going to enjoy this. I'm just going to enjoy this hamburger or whatever. You probably don't think that. It's probably one of the last things on your mind. So, maybe that gets you off the hook in terms of blameworthiness or something in some way. But strictly speaking, because you kind of know, and now you know, now that I've told you in this lecture, that you probably could be using that money to do something that would bring up the total happiness number more, you are, according to utilitarianism, doing something immoral. What some people take from this, the lesson some people take from this is that, well, we are just way less moral than we thought we were. We're just morally pretty pathetic, right? There's just a lot more things we could be doing right that we don't do. So we just fail morally on a daily basis in various ways. That's what some people think that this shows us. Other people react differently, and they think that, no, this just shows us that utilitarianism is crazy. Morality simply isn't this demanding. So I raise this because this does seem to be a problem for a lot of people. A lot of people think that morality isn't as demanding as utilitarianism tries to tell us it is, and that there's nothing immoral about going to dinner or enjoying a day of leisure, even though you're not maximizing the total happiness number. So a lot of people think that because utilitarianism implies this, that it shows that there's something very off about utilitarianism. Again, others think that no, what this really shows us is that we are just pretty, morally pathetic, and that we should be doing a lot more, and that we're having these, moral failings on a daily basis. So there's this debate or controversy about whether morality is as demanding as utilitarianism implies that it is. So that's the problem of demandingness. Is this a conclusive? Is this an obvious conclusive problem for utilitarianism, that it shows that utilitarianism is false? Well, again, no. There's debate about this. I'm not sure, but it's a significant issue. I think it's striking it would be very striking if morality was that demanding, and that we had to come to accept that most of us go around on a daily basis acting immorally throughout the day. I mean, that's a pretty I don't know if radical, but it's a pretty striking feature of utilitarianism. So I wanted to bring that to your attention as a potential problem for utilitarianism. So we're going to consider two other challenges for utilitarianism, which I think are very hard to deal with for utilitarianism. I myself find these to be the two most devastating problems for utilitarianism, really. But maybe some of you won't agree. There's always a couple people in the class who don't agree, although I find that most people do find these problems pretty serious too. So the first one is a problem coming from the idea of impartiality. Now, if you'll recall, when I was talking about the positive features of utilitarianism, I talked about impartiality. I talked about how you couldn't favor or be partial to people who or people in your social class, or people in your economic class, or things like that. You had to take everybody's happiness into account equally. And I talked about that as a selling feature of the view, about how it seems like treating people equally is an important thing, morally speaking, and that's a good feature of utilitarianism. However, there seem to be limits to this, morally speaking, and utilitarianism seems to violate them to many of us. So the problem here is that it seems like although we should to some extent treat people equally and take into account everyone's happiness, it seems that we actually, at the end of the day, we should not be completely impartial. We should, I think a lot of us will feel that, morally speaking, we should take certain people that we know and have relations to, we should take their happiness. We should make their happiness more important than the happiness of other people that we don't know, or people from different countries, things like that. And let me give you an example that's very effective that I've used before. So my ethics students have heard this one. So you're on a boat, right? You're on a boat with some people, a bunch of strangers. Maybe there's 40 people on the boat, okay? And you're on the boat with your spouse, and you're going on some kind of a pleasure cruise or sailing trip or something like that. And then you get into a rough storm. And the boat's tipping, right, one way or the other. I don't know what the sailing term is for tipping. I'm not sure. So the boat's rocking back and forth, and people start falling off the boat. And it so happens that basically almost everybody falls off the boat to one side, to the right side. And the boat rocks back the other way, and your wife or husband, your spouse, falls off on the other side, on the left side. So basically your spouse is on the left side, and everybody else is on the right side in the water. Now let's build into the situation that there's a limited amount of time to save these people of drowning. Everybody's going to drown in the very rough seas. You have one small life preserver that you can jump in and save people, and that you have a choice to make here. You can jump in on the right side of the boat with the life preserver, and you can round up a bunch of people. Or imagine that there's a small boat, and you can jump in off the right side and round up a bunch of people on the right side. Probably save 20, 30 people, get them in the boat, and save them from drowning. But if you do that, you won't have time to go around to the other side and save your wife. Okay? This is just built into the scenario. Students are always like, well, wait, couldn't you do both? No. Just imagine that whatever the circumstances are of the situation, they're such that you don't. The choice is like this, right? If you go save these people on the right side, your wife is going to drown. Okay, your wife or husband is going to drown. Your other choice is to jump in on the side of your spouse. You can easily save your spouse, but we can imagine, again, built into the situation that you won't have time to get around to the other side of the boat, and all the 30 or 40 people on the right side, they'll all drown. So that's your choice. Either save your spouse or save the 30, 40 people that you don't really know. They're just strangers. Now, what is utilitarianism going to say the right thing to do in this situation is? Think about that. Well, the answer should be fairly obvious. It's going to say save the 30, 40 people, right? Save them. Why? Because that will maximize happiness, right? Now, some students always say, well, wait a second, you're going to be really unhappy if you let your spouse die. Yes, that's true. You're going to be really unhappy. But remember, first of all, it's not only your happiness that counts, but second, the total happiness number will still be greater if you save the 30, 40 people, because they're all going to be saved and lived and be happy. All their family members will be happy that they're alive. Yes, you're going to be miserable, but your misery is outweighed by the total happiness of all those other people. So the total happiness number will be highest if you save the 30, 40 people. If you jump to the left side and save your spouse, yes, your happiness will be higher. Your spouse's happiness and her family, the rest of your family's happiness will be higher. But that's going to be greatly outweighed by all the misery of the 30, 40 people dying, all their families being miserable, etc. So it's clear here that what utilitarianism will tell you to do is save the 30, 40 people on the right side of the boat and let your spouse drown. Now, and it doesn't have to be 30, 40 people. It could be, say, 10 people on the right side of the boat. Right? I mean, I just used that as an example. But let's say it's 15 people on the right side of the boat, your spouse on the left. Utilitarianism will still say the morally right thing to do, what you're morally obligated to do, is jump to the right side of the boat, save those people, save those strangers. Now, intuitively, I think a lot of us feel like this is not the right thing to do. A lot of us feel very strongly that the morally right thing to do in this case would be, in fact, to save your spouse, right? Yes, this would not maximize happiness, admittedly, but you have a special moral obligation to your spouse. This is your spouse. You're going to let them drown so you can save 15 strangers. Now, it's interesting. I find that there's always some amount of people who they're not moved by this and think, yes, you should save the 15 people, the 15 strangers. But I think many of us will feel very strongly that no, it's, you don't have an obligation to those people. It would be nice if you were able to save them too, but your priority is to save your spouse in this situation, right? I think there's a strong, intuitively compelling. I don't know how else to put it. I guess it's just simple and obvious. If you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. So if the counterexample is right, it shows that here's a situation where the morally right thing to do is to do something that does not maximize happiness. It doesn't maximize actual happiness, and it's not an issue of reasonably expected happiness. You can reasonably expect that saving your spouse in this situation will not maximize the total happiness number. But it seems intuitively clear to a lot of us that you should save your spouse in this situation, that is in fact morally acceptable, or perhaps even morally obligated. It seems to me that you're morally obligated to do it. So that, I think, is a serious problem for utilitarianism. And not everybody. I actually went out to dinner with one of the husband of one of the philosophy faculty members in the UMass department, and we talked about this over dinner because he is a utilitarian, and he thought that no, you should save the strangers in that situation. That was obviously the morally right thing to do. So there are, and his wife was sitting right next to him as we were talking about this. Kind of makes you think, well, I wouldn't want to be in that marriage. I don't know. They're nice people, and I really wonder if it came down to it, what he really would do in that situation. He might say, well, I would probably end up saving my wife, but I would have to acknowledge that I hadn't acted morally. I mean, that's one way to think about it. You think, well, in that situation, I just wouldn't be able to help myself, but I would really do the immoral thing, saving my spouse. I don't like that, and that I think that, no, I think that, you could be at peace with yourself and think, I did the morally right thing. I saved my spouse. Yes, it's unfortunate that these 15 people drown, but I had an obligation. I had a genuine moral obligation to my spouse. So that's what I think. Again, there's people who disagree with me about this, but I think it's a serious challenge for utilitarianism. And the challenge, again, is that it seems like we should be impartial to some extent, but we should actually be partial also to some extent. That we have special obligations and responsibilities to certain people that were, our friends and family and things like that, or maybe our fellow countrymen, things like that, that we do not have to other people. And that the problem with utilitarianism is that it doesn't recognize that. It does require total impartiality, and that seems to be too much impartiality. Okay, so that's the problem of impartiality. And the last problem that I want to talk about, I don't have a pithy label for. We can just call this, extremely bad implications, or the extremely bad implications problem. Let me give you the kind of example. And again, my ethics students are familiar with this example, but it's such a great example that it does the job so nicely that I'm going to use it. Is the example of the hospital patient case, which some of you have heard. So suppose that you're a doctor, right? You're a doctor in a hospital. You're a surgeon, right? And somebody comes in the hospital. Okay, hold on. You're a surgeon, and you have a bunch of patients who are in the hospital who are in need of organ transplant, so they're going to die. Let's say you have 7 of them. You have 7 people, and they need a bunch of different organs, but they're all of a very rare blood type, right? So you're having a hard time finding organ donors for them, right? So they're all sitting there dying, and you're unable to locate donors for these people because they have each of them has a very rare blood type. So you're upset about this situation. Then you're looking over a list of things in the hospital, and you notice that a patient has come in that day for a very routine checkup. He's not sick, but he's of this very rare blood type, right? So you're thinking about it, and you realize, wow, I know this guy is totally healthy, but if he were to die, I could take his organs, and I could save all 7 of my patients. So you go to his room, and you see that he's just getting some kind of blood work drawn. Again, there's nothing wrong with him. He's sitting there, and so you start talking to him for a few minutes, and you realize that very easily, right, you could give him a shot of some kind of solution that would painlessly kill him, and then you could just take his organs out. And let's imagine that nobody would find out about this in the hospital. You could easily cover this up. Now, what does utilitarianism say that you should do in that situation? Well, if you said that it says you should kill this person and take his organs, you're right, because it looks like it does say that. Right? It's a simple calculation. He's one person. He has some amount of happiness that would, be gone if you were to kill him. But taking his organs, you would be able to save 7 people. So the overall net increase in happiness would be greater. Right? The net preservation or increase in happiness would be greater if you were to kill this person and take his organs and give them to your patients. So the utilitarian answer here is kill the person and give his organs to your patients. But what do we think about the idea of killing this innocent person and giving his organs to your patients? We think that it's immoral, right? There's probably I don't know if we can think of a clearer case of doing something that would be horribly immoral than this. So it looks like utilitarianism is just straightforwardly telling us to do something that's horribly immoral and wrong. And that is a direct counterexample to utilitarianism. Utilitarianism implies the right thing to do in the hospital patient case is to kill the innocent patient and give his organs out. But we all know intuitively, it's intuitively obvious that that would be immoral. So that shows us that utilitarianism is false. It's implying something that is intuitively, obviously false. So that's so I think that's one of the biggest problems for utilitarianism, cases like that, right? That just look like straightforward counterexamples, where utilitarianism is just getting the answer totally wrong. It's telling us to do something that's obviously horribly immoral, namely killing an innocent person just to take his organs and give them to other people. So there are various maneuvers that utilitarianism try to make about this case. I don't think any of them are particularly compelling. Utilitarians will say things like, well, that would be generally a bad practice to do. If people did that if doctors were always doing things like that, then nobody would trust their doctor, nobody would want to go to the doctor and things like that. That's true. That's absolutely true. If everybody acted like that all the time, then it would cause problems, right? But take the current situation. Doctors don't act like that, right? We don't think that they do. Imagine just that the doctor knows this. He knows that, doctors don't act like this. This is not going to be a general practice, and he's not going to tell anybody that he kills this patient. He's just going to keep it a secret to himself forever. And he thinks, yeah, I should do this because this is going to maximize happiness. It still seems to me like that's very wrong. Even if the guy could keep it a secret, nobody would ever know about it. It still seems clear that he shouldn't kill this patient just to dole out his organs and save his other patients. So it seems to me still that this is a very serious counterexample to utilitarianism, so much so that between this and the impartiality issue, I very much think that there's a serious problem with utilitarianism, so much so that I think that it's false as a moral theory. But again, there's some controversy about this, but I think these are obviously very serious challenges for the utilitarianism, for the utilitarian view. Okay, so those are the problems I wanted to give you for utilitarianism, and I'm going to leave it at that. It's an interesting moral theory. It's still a candidate moral theory. People try to save it and salvage it in various ways and modify it, and it's kind of evolved actually into a more complicated moral theory that takes into account more than just happiness. And they think, the view that utilitarianism has evolved into is something more broad known as consequentialism. That says that you have to take into account more than just happiness, just the general consequences of your action are what matter, and there are various things that you build into the consequences, not just happiness. And so with this kind of modifications, the view tries to get around the kind of hospital patient case and other kinds of cases, the impartiality case and things like that. But that would really take us into talking about a more complicated kind of ethical view that we're not going to have time to do in the semester. So I just wanted to introduce you to utilitarianism as one attempt to answer the question of what it is to act morally right and morally wrong. And there we go. I gave you the good features of it and some of the most serious challenges to it. And I think that's going to wrap up the amount of material that we try to cover. So that should be plenty for the upcoming test. And I would like you to get studying the review. I'm going to post the review questions as soon as possible, later tonight or early tomorrow. And I'd like you to get trying to answer them and sending me questions about them as soon as possible.